Hello, I'm Phil. I'm working for Red Hat, and today I would like to elaborate a bit on the question, why should you use iproute2? Or in detail, should you at all? What is iproute2 about? It's mostly famous, the IP utility, which many of you know about. But there's actually more that comes with the package. We have a replacement for netstat, which is called SS. Bit of a bad name for German. There are a bunch of statistics utilities, like, obviously there weren't enough statistics already. We have some obscure utility which does things with bridges, but it's not exactly replacement to bridge utils. We have the famous TC. Everyone doing QoS probably had to deal with it. There's some minor stuff like this transparent IPC configuration utility. I personally didn't use. And obviously there are many more which I have no idea if they are used at all or just dinosaurs from a foreign time. I will, in this talk, basically just cover the first three items because the rest is beyond the scope. Okay, so general question. Do you really want to use this? And many of you would say you don't. Well, I got used to it, so I can't really answer this question why, but I did some research on the internet, and people were complaining, and I tried to write together what they were complaining about. So the biggest issue is it's hard to learn, especially when your muscle memories remember the old stuff. And man page isn't exactly readable to people not perfectly used to BNF. Yeah. In addition, it has a whole of 17 subcommands. So the IP man page is pretty overwhelming. You can, in order to reduce typing, you can abbreviate them, which means your friend who reads your history doesn't have an idea what you were doing. And sometimes you have to take care how you order the different parameters. It's not exactly get-opt, so to be precise, not at all. So it's not intuitive. Many people also said it's simply inconvenient. With ifconfig, you could just set ifconfig, ETH0, IP address, and boom, you have your interface. With iproute, you have to add the IP address and then in addition set it up. And when you list your interfaces, you don't see the statistics by default, so you don't see what it's doing. But in addition, you get all the disabled interfaces, which many don't like or are not interested in. And which is kind of funny if you try to mess with your co-working sysadmin. You can add IPv4 aliases, which are not seen by ifconfig. So you can play games with them. Further things. Output formatting is a big issue. It's like you're trying to display the routing table, but you don't see a table at all. It's just a number of messy lines. SS kind of goes the opposite way. It overdoes tabling, so you always get the full terminal width, no matter how wide your terminal is, and it still tends to break lines. Another thing I heard was iproute2 is Linux specific. Ifconfig, netstat, route, these are basically Unix commandos. So going to BSD or whatever, true64, you can, at least you have an idea what you should look at. iproute2 isn't existing there at all. And yeah, it's a bit cheating, but still you can't do everything with it. Yeah, of course, I couldn't display my presentation using iproute. Not that I would want to, so, but still you have ETH tool and iwconfig. There's no support for wireless or hardware-like stuff. Okay, to illustrate a bit, I have a number of questions for you. First one is, what does IPRS really stand for? We have rule set, rule show, route set, route show. D? G? G is good. G is good. We use G. The question is, the answer is it's iproute show. That was pretty obvious. So we take the next simple example, IPLS. Is it L2TP set, show, link set, or link show? You're undecided? Okay. Let's see, it's IP link set. So, not exactly what you would expect. Next thing is, we're covering parameter ordering. I've colored the different parts of the parameters for you to easily recognize them. So the link part is always in red. Then we have in green the name and blue the type. Yeah. And actually only one of them is valid. Yeah, I know it's too hard. It's too hard. So, C was the right answer. I'll explain this right now. So, I didn't write that code, luckily, but I can try to explain it a bit, at least why things are like this. So, let's start with parameter shortening. What iproute basically does is it calls a function which is called matches, and matches does just check is the parameter which you gave it shorter than what you have passed as second argument, and or shorter or equal, so it's not exceeding it, and then it compares only that part. So if you given this in a main function, and you pass f as argv, then it will default to foobar instead of feedbabe, simply because it comes first. And this is not intuitive because they are not alphabetically ordered, but it's like this in the code. So you could always look up the code if you want to know which is the default. Okay, now ordering constraints, they actually make sense, although you wouldn't recognize if you don't know. The point is here that the type keyword actually in secret dispatches to type-specific code. So while the interface name and the link parameter which says which interface to link this interface name to belongs to the generic IP, and the ID is a parameter which belongs to the VLAN specific code. So that's why you have to order it like this, and once you know it, the previous question can simply be answered. Okay, SS output formatting. I tried to fix this, and it's not so easily. The problem is that it supports Unix sockets. Unix sockets are just a file, and it displays the whole path. So you can't say, okay, it's at max 128 bits in IPv6 notation, but it could be any path name with arbitrary length. So it just tries to use the maximum space available so it can display them. It uses, well, it finds out how wide the terminal is, and then just expands the columns. And it tries to separate this all from extended socket info by inserting a bit of spaces, so the extended data gets forced into the next line. Not with a new line, but just because it's too wide and it knows how wide the terminal is. In addition to that, some extended info is still prefixed by a new line character. So if you have a small terminal, you type a command and you maximize it. This won't go in one line. So that's just how it is, and let's see if something can be done about it in the future. So still, I think you should use iproute, and this is how. We have lots of tools which are being deprecated or replaced by iproute. Yeah, the obvious ones, of course. In addition to that, you can do the full VLAN device management with it. You can manage Ethernet bridges, bonding configuration, TAN-tab interfaces. You can set IPsec parameters, security associations, and policies. You can control the neighbor cache, also of IPv6. So I don't know if there's a dedicated tool for that. You can do multicast address management with it, various IP tunnels, there are a dozen or so, and interface renaming, which is usually done either by nameif or by udev or systemd, I don't know. You can do it with iproute2. Okay, it supports a wide variety of interface types. There are definitely more than this, but those are only, well, not even all, but those are those for which you have type-specific code. So, like for the VLAN interfaces, the ID parameter, stuff like that. I don't list maxsec interfaces here, because as far as I know, it's not yet upstream. Yeah. But yeah, apart from that, I guess pretty much everything is meanwhile implemented in iproute2, and there are no dedicated tools anymore for newer device types, which get added to the kernel, and therefore the default is iproute. You can have, well, documentation is not as clear, but there is link-specific helps. So if you use IP link help without parameter, it will show you generic options, and in addition to that, the number of a list of interface names or type names which it supports, and passing it the type, you should get type-specific help texts. You should, because on RHEL 7 it's not there yet. But it's in the process. Okay, so IP address is better than ifconfig. Few examples. You don't need to have IP aliases for to have multiple IPv4 addresses per interface. You can select devices by giving a selector, and well, it displays peer addresses. This is just something that ifconfig doesn't know about or isn't able to. Below is an example of this. So what I did was I wanted to show the addresses of ETH0 which go to this subnet, and as you see, it prints me 3 different addresses in a subnet actually, which is quite fine. I could also skip away the device parameter, so I get all addresses which the host has to this subnet for every address. And the second example shows a peer address, so it's basically point-to-point. There is more info, like, for example, the dynamic keyword, which shows that this interface, that this address was added by DHCP, and the last line shows a label, ETH0:1, which is compatibility mode for ifconfig. So ifconfig will then show you an ETH0:1 with this IP address. Next one, iproute, which supersedes route by supporting policy routing, which of course goes hand in hand with multiple routing tables. You can, just like with IP address, look up routes selectively. You can save and restore routes, just like you can do with, for example, IP tables. I have no idea. I think maybe. Because I could imagine that you just have the kernel dump the whole route, the whole routing table. That would be atomic, kind of. I'm not sure how the kernel implements this. And it might be possible that you can add several routes at once, so the restore would be the same way. But I would have to check the code for that. In addition to that, iproute supports extended features and flags, which I couldn't find in route documentation. Might be wrong. I don't use it for a very long time now. I have some examples here as well, like showing a route for this subnet. I guess it has to be exact with the show command, and it shows me which source address will then be used. In addition to that, there is a get command, which shows me if I wanted to route a packet to this destination IP, which way would the kernel choose? And that's pretty neat. So it shows me that this IP goes onto ETH0 with this source address and cache.
Will it also provide information if it's routing tables involved? Or that routing tables, if you have routing tables enabled, will it then actually tell which table it goes to? If it is not the default one?
Should. We can try that later. It's a good idea, so I know what I do. Okay, the last line just shows a pretty useless example of how to save and restore. So save just writes binary data to standard out, and iproute restore reads binary data from standard in. So you can use this to have to do stuff that doesn't make sense, but you can also redirect it into. Yeah. What is IPv6?
Well, does that iproute only give you IPv4 or does it give you IPv6 in addition?
I might be wrong, but I would guess that iproute simply outputs the v4 routing table, because usually when using iproute you have to specify -6 explicitly, so you get IPv6 routes. Could be that this is IP version agnostic, but I doubt so. I guess you would have to do the same for IPv6 as well. Hope that answers your question. Okay, why is SS better than netstat? Although you wouldn't expect. In addition to this, the well-known socket formats, it displays also netlink and packet sockets. It has a built-in socket filter, so which makes the ungrabbable output a little bit more grabbable by having a built-in grab. It uses the netlink diag interface, but it can fall back to procfs, which is used by netstat. This, in particularly, allows it to display lots more information about the socket than procfs does, than netstat does. And yeah, below is an example. So I filter for established sockets with a source port lower or equal to 1024. And by surprise, I only see the SSH connection I have to this machine. I see which user there is with PID and which FD number that is. I see, for example, TCP info, like the congestion control mechanism which is being used, and or stuff like the maximum segment size. So that's pretty nice. I have some bonus material for the case that I have too much time, like I guess I have. There is, for all of you who prefer ifconfig just because of convenience, there is IFCFG, which tries to do everything even a little bit better than ifconfig. Maybe it overdoes it a bit, but it, of course, sets your link up. It performs duplicate address detection. You can use it like ifconfig with IP alias notation and knows what to do. It sends unsolicited ARP replies. It adds some fancy routes, and it can even trigger router discovery for IPv6. Still, I'm not pretty sure this will this is completely compatible to IPv6. So it might be that there are some hidden pitfalls in there. Okay, there is a tool which allows you to list routes as tables. It's basically implemented as a shell wrapper. It lists IPv4 and IPv6 routes at the same time. Although you can't select them specifically. It supports the table, but if you choose the table to display, then it automatically displays only IPv4, which is pretty much a bug. And table formatting is still a bit broken because of that column choosing algorithm, which is not quite understandable and, well, not pretty well implemented. Another thing which I find very nice to do with iproute is listing network namespaces, which are, in case you're unfamiliar, is like a virtual network stack on your local host. You can move network interfaces into there, which are then limited to that scope, and you can run a process in there which only sees the network as it is represented by this network namespace. Very quick how-to, lots of commands. First line adds a network namespace named test and lists it. Second command adds a virtual Ethernet pair and automatically moves the VETH1 part into the testnet NS. And then two commands, lines 3 and 4, to configure the interface and set it up. Lines 5 and 6 to do the same to the local interface. And that's all. Finally, I can ping the other side. This allows me to do server-client tests, for example, on a local machine without having to have some virtual machine or anything. Statistics. Most importantly, and I guess not really well known, is netstat, which is able to monitor everything that's within proc netstat. There are many files in there, and the format is not really human readable. You can choose from which file, which key or which column you want to monitor, and it supports running in iterations. So it's like with watch attached. To make things a little bit more convenient, there is a -d parameter, which just prints what keys are present in which file. And an example usage is to iterate every 2 seconds and list the key or the column hits from the file up cache and entries from RT cache. There are more statistics using ifstat, ntstat, rtact. These monitor different things, but the implementation is pretty much identical, which has the same bugs, funnily, and it supports some daemon mode, which is a bit unintuitive. That's why I have it here explicitly. So you start, for example, ifstat -d10, so it will update its statistics every 10 seconds. And this will fork into background. And with ifstat -s, you call the daemon to dump the statistics. And so although this watch command will update every 2 seconds by default, the data will only update every 10 seconds. Okay, hands-on. Things will get funny right now. I heard one suggestion to look at, what was that? Route stunting. So the question is, how do we do this? Is that okay? Okay, what was that again?
Save.
Ah, save. Restore. So, how do I interpret this? I have no idea actually.
ASCII format? It's a binary format?
Hmm?
The point is, don't say the root in ASCII format.
It's not ASCII format, otherwise you would see it on the right side. So that's binary, but I have an idea. I have those IPv6 routes. So I'll add an IPv6 address, have another IPv6 routing table entry, and I can simply compare the output. This is cheating, I know.
But they are the same size.
Yeah. So probably it just updated the counters. I didn't show them before, did I?
Do a IP route save with -4 to only get IP4 than it should. And then you can do the same with 6 and you see the size difference.
You see parameter ordering. Yeah, it's another way to tackle this. Oh, we finally see a difference. So I can't be completely sure, but I'd say this is limited to IPv4, and you have to specify -6 to have the IPv6 routing table. What else should we do? I could look at netstat. This is the output you get from the -d command, and yeah, so you can basically choose what to dump here. That's basically the table format you get. That's as beautiful as it is. Yes?
There were some others show like new type of the interface. Only for the interface we can show by date, time.
By table? By table or by what?
By date, by type, so bridge, reline.
Ah, by type. Yeah, it's problematic here because although, well, it's possible upstream, but not in Rel 7 yet. You could do something like this, and it might also missing feature. So you can't list addresses by type, but you can list links by type, and given the link, you can show the address by specifying the device. Yeah. Yes, sure, go ahead.
Can you say a word or two about the relationship to network manager? Because it basically has a subset of what IP does.
Yeah, network manager is front end, I'd say, in regards of the relationship between both. And looking at, well, if you try to use both concurrently, you'll maybe run into issues. So network manager at least doesn't recognize what you're doing. And yeah, with network manager, you
The reason I'm asking is because I think with Rel 7 you're supposed to use network manager to control your interfaces, right?
yeah. But well, just so much for this. I'm using iproute for testing in there, and it's not like it's taking me the IP address away or something. So it doesn't interfere. Yeah.
Until we read like the network device.
Yeah, I don't do anything in Network Manager, and as long as I don't do that, it's fine. Yeah. I guess I have to try to hit you with this scarf. Any more questions? Okay, you may ask first.
Not a question, but rather a proposal.
No question.
From what I see, you are slowly implementing error prone and SQL-like interface to perhaps it's time to consider to implement an SQL interface, SQL language within your set of tools. This sounds more practical rather than trying to implement your own version of GitHub or something like this, what we do right now.
Yeah, why not? I mean, we could maybe implement a Lua interface to iproute2. Lua, the scripting language. It's pretty famous and it's flexible.
Go with Sutter. Well, that's probably interesting, but
yeah.
What you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to solve, is easily solved with SQL. Because what you're doing is to select from there, like something like this.
Regarding the query language. Yeah.
Proper language is using proper language for the task.
We could actually maybe do this pretty simple by dumping the data, full data, into a SQLite database, and then querying that. Okay. I really feel like throwing that scarf at you now. Any other questions?
There is a possibility to sort the output because the order of the interfaces is not guaranteed to be reduced. So if I save the output of the IP address show and reboot the machine and then the other one, the order is different, and this to the administrator very difficult to compare them. It is if the configuration is correct. So.
Yeah, output reordering, but well, bit of explanation. Natively, the output is ordered by interface index,
Yes.
and those change.
If it will be possible to sort by the name of the interface, we have some option. It will be great.
But then the
There-
indexes will be different, so the
There-
output will be still different.
So names are persistent now.
Yeah, but the indexes on the beginning of the line will be different.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if I sort if the output ignores the indexes or if I want to sort by the name of the interface, so I don't understand about the indexes.
If you would sort by name and doing a link between two outputs, it will still actually be not identical because the index could have changed already. And there might be some other information which is slightly different. So you
I don't want to cut you off, but before people leave, I would like to thank you. Here are some links to documentation, like man pages. Yeah, and you can leave feedback if you like. Apart from that, thanks for listening.